Welcome back to Money Matters. I'm David Kroll from Mortgage Network, and I'm standing with Emily Johnson of Polaris Capital, my partner in crime here. We were just discussing preparation for retirement and what some of the more important concepts are when you look at a retirement area like Hilton Head. What are the things you need to be thinking about? We're just about to dive into the next sort of interesting aspect, which is that everybody you talk to uses certain interchangeable terms, and they don't mean the same to everybody. Here's the example. The IRS regards any property that you rent as an investment property. You must declare the income on Schedule E of your tax return, and then you get to declare every little bit and piece of expense that you have to do with that property. You also get to use it for 2 weeks a year, or 3 weeks a year, or 4 weeks a year, or 5 weeks a year. So you get the use and enjoyment of the property, but for tax purposes, it's investment property. You also get to take depreciation on that property. So as an overall event, the property works beautifully on your tax return, because it's an investment property with all kinds of expenses and probably creates a paper loss, which you get to deduct against your income. Mm-hmm. So that's a brilliant thing. We as the mortgage banker view that as a second home. It's a second home because you get to use it at least 2 weeks a year, and because you didn't need the income in order to be able to afford to borrow the money. Mm-hmm. So, and we, the mortgage banker, don't talk to the IRS, and the IRS doesn't talk to us. So for us, it's a second home, which means that you get very favorable financing. You see? Okay. You get best financing, same as if it was a primary home. But for the IRS, it's an investment property.
Interesting.
Thirdly, for Beaufort County, for the purposes of real estate tax, what is it?
Second home.
Second home. Almost correct, because technically it's a what is it called? It's not a non-owner occupied. It's a non-residential. It's, in other words,
not your primary.
It's not your primary home, so it's a non-residential tax rate, which makes it either a second home or an investment property are in the same bag because you don't live here. So you pay at a tax rate for a $300,000 place, you're going to pay $4,500 in taxes, whereas if you lived here, you would pay $1,500 in taxes.
And we have that conversation a good bit with folks as to do they want to keep their primary residence here, somewhere else, et cetera. But another important factor when you're looking at that is, and something that a lot of folks don't look into before they make the leap, is will the income that I have continue for both me and my spouse in the future? Because if you're looking at new fixed expenses, say whatever your mortgage is going to be here, perhaps the mortgage that you're still going to have somewhere else, what's your cost of living going to be here? Are you an avid golfer? Are you both avid golfers? Et cetera. Are your kids local? Are your kids somewhere else? You're going to be traveling a lot for that. When you look at all of those costs, fixed costs and discretionary costs, it's really important before you really do make the leap to consider, will this income last for me and my spouse if one of us predeceases the other, or will a portion of it stop with me? And most of the time, Social Security obviously continues, but I have seen plenty of cases with government workers where that is not the case, and it can cause a lot of jeopardy in the future. The other thing is pensions. You'd be surprised, and maybe you wouldn't out there, pardon me, how many spouses you ask when we're looking at pensions, and you say, is this pension going to continue for your spouse? Well, chances are your spouse elected whatever they elected on that pension when they started working 30 years ago, and they don't remember. So I would say probably only about 50% of the folks that I talk to about this have actually looked at what income will continue in the future and what won't. That's a really important factor when you're considering what are my new fixed expenses going to be, and also how much risk can I take in investing my funds for the future. Does one of you have, much more life expectancy than the other, et cetera, et cetera? So again, not to sound particularly dark, but that's just one of those factors that it's really important to ask those questions before you actually make the leap, because it really should impact not only what you purchase and how you purchase it, but also how you then invest your funds timing of your retirement, et cetera.
Yep, absolutely. The next piece of it is is another aspect of what to buy. You know you want to retire. You know you'd like to retire in Hilton Head. Let's make those assumptions. Would you like to buy a condominium which has short-term rental possibilities? Would you like to buy a home in Hilton Head Plantation, which is definitely residential, long-term rental perhaps, but definitely residential? What goes into the decision between the two? Part of it is the very thing that Emily was talking about, which is what's the play going to be if we don't retire in 2 years like we expect to? What if things come up and we can't retire for another 5 years? Which is the more manageable, the more easily the more easily managed on a financial basis. The second one is, what if one of us has an accident, loses a job, predeceases? What do we do with a condominium versus a home? What's going to be a burden, what's not? The general rule of thumb is that the closer to retirement that you are, the clearer the picture gets, the more likely it is that sitting down with Emily or sitting down with me, we can come up with a very clear picture, the closer you are to retirement. Therefore, the greater, the less risk you're putting yourself at when you take on the two properties.
And I get the question a lot, and I'm sure you do too. Is it too late to actually start planning for something like this? Definitely not, because if you're not planning at all, then you're just taking a leap, and things will happen whether you want them to or not. Life will continue. I don't need to tell anybody that, but definitely, it's never too late. Even if you feel like when you look at your balance sheet, you don't feel so great about it. For some reason, you feel like from a relative basis, you should be looking at something different, or you get the feeling from your friends that they're looking at a different picture, or maybe it just seems out of whack. Whatever. We see everything, and if you don't actually take that step to at least ask the questions in advance, then you really are limiting those opportunities, because there's plenty that you can do 2, 3, 1 even, a year before you actually make these leaps, because some people have a very short time frame that they want to make these decisions. But definitely, it's never too late to ask those questions.
And it's never too early to act like a person who's going to retire.
That's a great point.
I mean, we have folks that are buying for retirement 6, 7, 8 years ahead, and those strategies are also very interesting. For example, buy a house in Hilton Head Plantation for $450,000 today. Pop a $2,500 a month renter into it. Don't fix it up. Don't put in the brand new kitchens and bathrooms and
you can still rent it out for $3,000.
Yes, you still rent it out for a pile of money, but you do all of you turn it into your retirement castle 7 years from now when you're getting ready to retire, not now. So you get to rent it, you get to be a part of the market, so that the market hasn't doubled on you by 7 years from now. You get the fun of knowing that you've found your place in the sun. You may not get to live in it, but you found your place.
My experience is folks that do that actually tend to move sooner than they expect.
That's right.
We plan 6, 7, and then in 3, it's
I really
I'm not
like
renewing
my
that
place.
option.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. It's exciting. The other thing that we find is that making a decision of some sort, having a plan of some sort, makes retirement real for you, which is what you were just saying.
Exactly.
It really sets you on a course
and takes the fear out of the unknown, because there's still going to be plenty of unknown, but it strips a lot of that fear out, so you can enjoy this beautiful place that
and you do need a plan, because unlike our parents, we don't have stable retirement income. We've got to create our retirement situation, and it probably involves a couple of small part-time jobs during retirement. Not a bad thing if you're in Hilton Head. A little tougher if you're in Vermont or Maine. So anyway, there you go.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this week. We're really grateful that you watched our show. Please send us any questions, thoughts, ideas on future shows. If you're here visiting and you have thoughts on the show, please check us out on Facebook. Send us an email. We love hearing from visitors especially. So until next week, have a wonderful, wonderful Heritage Week, and we'll see you next week with more Money Matters.